They said I had nowhere to go, but I wasn't done yet. Monica Carter whispered to herself as she stepped off the empty bus into the chill of the early morning, the city skyline blurred by a light drizzle that slicked the streets with shimmering reflections of neon signs and traffic lights. Her suitcase, battered and overstuffed, scraped against the cracked pavement with each step, a small reminder that her life had turned upside down in the blink of an eye. Just hours ago, she had signed the final divorce papers for Michael Whitman, the billionaire whose empire had once been her world, whose promises of love had now dissolved into silence and emptiness. The penthouse they had shared, with its sweeping windows and golden chandeliers, felt like a dream she could no longer touch, a life that belonged to someone else. Rain dotted her shoulders as she walked, the damp fabric clinging to her blouse, and for a moment she paused beneath the dim glow of a streetlight, letting herself breathe in the city that seemed indifferent to her pain. She had learned the hard way that power and wealth could not protect her heart, that even in a life gilded with luxury, betrayal could find its way in. Monica's eyes traced the horizon, watching the faint stirrings of a city waking up, and in that quiet, she felt a strange combination of despair and determination. She remembered the laughter that had once filled the grand hallways, the quiet conversations over late-night dinners, the way sunlight had danced across his mahogany desk when he'd once praised her insights. All of it now felt like shadows, beautiful memories sharpened by loss. And yet, as the wind tugged at her scarf, she felt the first flicker of something new, possibility. Somewhere beyond the emptiness of her apartment, beyond the cold faces of strangers and the looming clouds above, there might be a way forward, a chance to reclaim her life not as a dependent of his fortune, but as Monica Carter, the woman who had her own strength. She drew her coat tighter, feeling the weight of her solitude, and started walking toward the less traveled streets where few dared to look, her boots echoing softly against the wet pavement. Every step was deliberate, a quiet rebellion against the collapse that had threatened to swallow her whole. And then, as she rounded the corner of an old brick building, a voice called from the shadows, calm but piercing. "Are you Monica Carter?" She froze, the suitcase at her side feeling suddenly lighter, her heartbeat a staccato drum in her ears. The stranger stepped closer, hand extended in an offer she couldn't yet comprehend, eyes steady, like a lighthouse cutting through fog. In that moment, the drizzle seemed to pause, the city held its breath, and Monica realized that the story of her life was not yet finished, that even in the ruins of betrayal, a spark could ignite the fire of reinvention. The streets that had felt cold and unforgiving now seemed alive with possibility, each reflection in the puddles catching the morning light and hinting at paths she hadn't yet walked, choices she hadn't yet made, doors that might open to a future entirely her own. With a cautious yet unyielding breath, she took the stranger's hand, feeling the stirrings of hope threading through the remnants of despair, and understood that the journey from the shadows back into her own light was beginning, that every setback had only prepared her for the moment she would rise stronger than ever before, a phoenix emerging from the ashes of what she had lost. The morning sunlight crept through the tall windows of the small apartment Monica now called home, casting long, golden streaks across the worn wooden floors and highlighting the faint dust motes that danced in the air like tiny sparks of possibility. She unpacked the last of her belongings, a mix of a few cherished keepsakes and the clothes that had survived the upheaval, placing them carefully in a small wardrobe she had purchased with her first paycheck from the new consulting firm where she had been offered a position. Each item she set down felt like a reclaiming of her own story, a quiet assertion that her life would no longer be dictated by someone else's choices or betrayals. The phone on the table buzzed with a message from the stranger who had found her the night before, a simple note of encouragement and the address of the office where she could report for her first day. And as she read it, a flicker of nervous excitement threaded through the fatigue in her chest. Monica paused by the window, looking out at the bustling streets below, the city alive with movement and opportunity, realizing that this was her chance to rebuild not just her life, but her sense of self. She had spent too long defined by her past, by the gilded cage of a marriage that had promised everything but delivered pain, and now every decision, every step, was hers to make. The cab ride to the office that morning felt surreal, the familiar sounds of city traffic weaving with the adrenaline pumping through her veins. And when she stepped through the glass doors of the consulting firm, the polished marble floors and minimalist decor no longer intimidated her. Instead, they felt like a stage upon which she could perform the reinvention she had envisioned. Her hands trembled slightly as she signed in, the receptionist offering a warm smile that hinted at trust and quiet confidence. And Monica felt a small surge of gratitude, a recognition that the world could indeed hold allies and opportunities, even amidst shadows of doubt. She was guided through the corridors to a modest but well-lit office, where the team welcomed her not with scrutiny, but with curiosity and respect, their eyes reflecting recognition of potential rather than pity. And as Monica settled into her new role, opening her laptop and reviewing the first assignments, she felt the familiar rhythm of purpose returning, a sense of competence and intelligence that no divorce papers or lost fortune could diminish. The hours passed in a blur of calculations, presentations, and meetings, each task reinforcing that she was capable, that her voice mattered. And when the midday sun streamed through the windows, warming her shoulders and casting a glow across the office, Monica allowed herself a small, private smile. Lunch was a quiet moment by the window, a simple sandwich and coffee, but even in this ordinary act, she sensed the extraordinary transformation taking root within her, from the fear and uncertainty of the night streets to the quiet authority of a professional environment, from survival to mastery of her own destiny. The stranger's words from last night, still echoing in her mind, acted like a mantra. You are capable, you are worthy, and this is only the beginning. Monica began to sketch a plan for her weeks ahead, identifying goals and strategies, visualizing presentations, imagining herself standing before executives with confidence and clarity, each mental rehearsal tightening the bond between intent and action, and she felt the warmth of possibility fill the apartment in tandem with the sunlight that now drenched every corner. Evening arrived with its soft, amber glow, and as she returned to her modest home, Monica noticed the quiet pride in the way her steps carried her across the threshold, no longer tentative but deliberate, each movement a testament to resilience and determination. She poured herself a cup of tea and looked out over the skyline, the lights of the city beginning to twinkle like distant stars, and for the first time since the divorce, she did not feel alone or defeated. There was a rhythm to her breath, a steadiness to her heart, a sense that she was moving forward not as someone who had been cast aside, but as a woman reclaiming her narrative. In the quiet reflection of that evening, Monica allowed herself to envision the path that lay ahead, the meetings, the challenges, the small victories that would accumulate into the triumph she had dreamed of, and a sense of lightness spread through her chest, the realization that while her past had shaped her, it would not define her. And as the city hummed outside, alive and indifferent, Monica Carter felt the first real stirrings of power and confidence take root, a fire within that could not be extinguished, a promise that the days to come would be hers to write, each one building toward the moment when the world would finally recognize the strength, grace, and brilliance she had carried all along. The following morning, Monica Carter stood before the full-length mirror in her small apartment, adjusting the crisp blazer over her blouse and smoothing the crease of her tailored slacks, feeling the weight of responsibility and possibility settle comfortably on her shoulders. The sunlight poured through the blinds, slicing the room into strips of gold and shadow, reflecting the balance she now sought between her past and the future she was building with deliberate intention. The streets below were alive with movement, pedestrians weaving through the city with purpose, and she imagined herself moving among them not as someone invisible, but as a woman fully aware of her own potential and strength. Monica carried her leather briefcase carefully, the worn strap a reminder of the journey that had led her to this moment. And as she navigated the subway to reach her next meeting, the rhythm of the train beneath her feet seemed to echo the beat of determination in her chest. Each face she passed in the crowded car reminded her of the resilience of ordinary people, the quiet power and steady persistence, and she found a renewed sense of kinship with the city, a community of ambition and tenacity that mirrored the drive she felt igniting inside herself. Arriving at the sleek office tower, she entered through revolving glass doors that reflected the sky above, tall and boundless. And the lobby was a testament to modern design. Polished floors gleaming beneath suspended lighting that caught the edges of the glass walls like scattered prisms. Monica's steps were measured, her head held high as she approached the reception desk, exchanging polite greetings with a receptionist whose warm tone conveyed reassurance rather than judgment. And in that brief interaction, she felt the first stirrings of confidence settle into her bones, a quiet validation that she belonged in spaces once dominated by others. Her first meeting was with a team of analysts, all focused and precise. And as Monica presented her insights, each carefully calculated observation was met with nods and thoughtful questions, the exchange of ideas energizing her and confirming that her intellect and dedication could command attention without pretense. She felt the familiar pulse of excitement that comes when one is fully engaged in meaningful work, the rhythm of her own expertise asserting itself in a tangible way, and the sunlight through the floor-to-ceiling windows cast a halo around her, emphasizing her presence and lending a cinematic quality to the ordinary. During lunch, Monica allowed herself a moment of reflection, sipping her tea while gazing at the city streets bustling below, and she realized that the smallest victories, the careful steps toward rebuilding a career and reclaiming dignity, carried a profound significance that no wealth or title could replicate. Her mind replayed the lessons of the past weeks, each challenge that had tested her resolve now transformed into strategies for growth, each moment of uncertainty reshaped into opportunities for insight and mastery. The afternoon brought client consultations, calls that required poise and clarity, and Monica found herself navigating each with a newfound authority, her voice steady, her language precise, conveying competence and calm, and the satisfaction of accomplishment coursed through her with a subtle, persistent warmth. By the time she returned home that evening, the skyline was awash with amber and indigo, the glow of windows and streetlights painting the city in an impressionist palette of ambition and quiet triumph. And she allowed herself to sit by the window, notebook in hand, mapping out goals for the days ahead with careful attention to detail and thoughtful anticipation. Monica paused to breathe, letting the cool night air mix with the warm lamplight of her apartment, and she felt the steady rise of something that had been absent for too long. The certainty that she was not defined by her past, that every decision, every calculated effort, was hers to direct, and that the path she was walking led to a horizon filled with potential, empowerment, and the light of opportunities yet unseen. In that reflective moment, she recognized that strength was not born from comfort or ease, but from the deliberate, unyielding pursuit of purpose. And with a final glance at her reflection, Monica Carter smiled, the curve of her lips hinting at the determination and resilience that would carry her into the next chapter, confident that the city, vibrant and relentless, was now a partner in the reclamation of her life and the realization of the woman she had always been meant to become. The following morning, Monica Carter woke to the soft glow of sunlight spilling across the walls of her modest apartment, the city outside humming with the quiet energy of early commuters and delivery trucks, a rhythm that seemed to pulse in harmony with the resolve building inside her. She moved deliberately, preparing for the gala event she had been invited to, a gathering she once would have thought unattainable, filled with executives, philanthropists, and influential figures whose presence could shape the trajectory of her budding career. Her red dress lay carefully pressed on the bed, a symbol of transformation she had carried in her mind for weeks, and as she slipped into it, the fabric hugged her confidently, the color vibrant against her skin, catching the morning light in a way that seemed to illuminate the new chapter of her life. She accessorized minimally, a delicate necklace, understated earrings, each piece chosen not for opulence, but for the quiet assertion of taste and strength. Monica examined herself in the mirror, straightening her posture, lifting her chin, and as her reflection stared back, she saw not just survival, but emergence, a woman who had endured and now commanded presence without raising her voice. The ride to the gala was punctuated by the gentle hum of traffic and the soft click of her heels as she stepped from the car, the grand venue rising before her with a sleek, modern facade, glass and steel catching the sunlight in dazzling patterns that mirrored the shimmer of possibility she felt inside. Inside, the room was alive with murmurs of conversation, laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the subtle aroma of champagne mingling with the warm scent of polished wood and fresh flowers. Monica moved with calm assurance, her gaze steady, each step measured, aware of the eyes following her with curiosity, noting her presence, the poise she carried effortlessly, and she allowed a small smile to play across her lips, a quiet acknowledgement of the journey that had led her here. The host approached, extending greetings, and she engaged with polite charm, sharing insights and listening intently, demonstrating a depth of understanding that drew nods of respect from those she spoke to. Each interaction reinforced the sense of authority she had been cultivating in the weeks since her past life had unraveled. Every conversation a reminder that intelligence and grace could command attention without the need for grandeur or wealth. As the evening progressed, she found herself approaching the central stage where keynote speakers would address the crowd, her steps confident, the subtle sway of her dress drawing light without intention, a visual metaphor for the emergence of someone who had once been hidden in shadows, now stepping into the light. The speech began, and Monica listened attentively, absorbing the cadence, the phrasing, the strategies discussed, recognizing opportunities she could translate into her own path. And in her mind she rehearsed presentations, visualized connections, imagined the influence she could exert through thoughtfulness and preparation rather than inherited privilege. Drinks and hors d'oeuvres passed, conversations flared, alliances formed, and Monica navigated the room with ease, introducing herself with a calm clarity, each introduction a reinforcement of her own agency and the choices she had made to arrive at this moment. Finally, as the event reached its zenith, a familiar presence entered the room, the subtle shift in energy signaling recognition, curiosity, and the awareness of someone who had once occupied the heights of wealth and influence, now observing the quiet power of a woman who had rebuilt herself from the ground up. Monica's gaze met his for a brief instant, a flash of tension and history passing between them, unspoken, measured, yet powerful in its implication, and she realized that this encounter, though silent, carried the weight of her transformation and the potential to reshape perceptions. The gala lights reflected in her eyes as she moved among the crowd, aware, composed, empowered, a silent declaration that she was no longer defined by the confines of her past, that she had reclaimed her space, her dignity, and her voice. And as the night unfolded, she felt the undercurrent of possibility grow, each smile, each conversation, each intentional glance a step toward the culmination of the woman she had become, poised not just to participate in the world of influence around her, but to leave an indelible mark through intelligence, courage, and quiet mastery of her own destiny. The city beyond the glass doors continuing its rhythm as witness to her ascent, a testament to resilience, transformation, and the light she now carried within. As the gala continued into the evening, Monica Carter moved with a deliberate grace, her posture straight, her expression composed, each interaction carefully measured to reflect the competence and confidence she had cultivated over the past weeks. The hum of conversation, the clinking of glasses, and the soft notes of a piano playing in the corner created a backdrop of sophistication that mirrored her own ascent, and she felt the subtle thrill of recognition as colleagues and acquaintances acknowledged her with nods of respect and curiosity. Every step she took across the polished marble floors, the soft rustle of her red dress catching the light, was a statement of transformation, a visual representation of the journey from despair to agency that she had undertaken with unwavering determination. Monica's eyes scanned the room, noting alliances being formed, ideas exchanged, and potential opportunities for collaboration, each moment reinforcing her sense of place and the realization that her intellect and resilience were commanding attention without the need for embellishment or spectacle. Approaching a table where a group of executives discussed upcoming projects, she listened intently, absorbing details and asking pointed questions that demonstrated her expertise, her voice calm, measured, and authoritative, drawing nods of acknowledgement and subtle smiles of approval from those she addressed. The rhythm of the evening carried her from one conversation to another, each exchange reinforcing her growing network, each smile and handshake a reminder that she was no longer defined by the shadows of her past, but by the clarity and precision with which she now navigated her world. As the light from the chandeliers reflected off crystal glasses and polished surfaces, Monica felt a quiet surge of satisfaction, the ambient glow framing her presence as a woman fully in command of her own narrative, a narrative no longer subject to the whims or betrayal of others, but shaped by her own choices and vision. Moments of pause allowed her to take in the grand hall, to observe the subtle dynamics of the room, the way influence and authority flowed through gestures, tone, and positioning, and she noted internally how she could leverage these observations to advance her own objectives, each calculation executed with the poise and subtlety that came from experience and self-awareness. The evening's keynote speaker concluded, and applause filled the room, a crescendo that seemed to echo her own internal triumphs. And Monica took a measured step toward the terrace, seeking a quiet vantage point where the night sky stretched above the city, stars beginning to glimmer faintly against the deepening blue. From this perch, the expanse of Manhattan unfolded below, streets awash in lights and movement, and she felt the hum of possibility, the potential for her life to unfold in ways she had carefully envisioned, yet now more vivid and tangible than ever before. As she leaned against the railing, a familiar figure approached from the shadows, his presence commanding yet measured, and their eyes met across the distance, a silent acknowledgement of the history and complexity that lingered between them. Monica felt no fear, only the steady pulse of readiness, a clear understanding that her journey had equipped her with clarity, resilience, and power, and that this encounter, like every step before it, would be met with deliberate calm and authority. The breeze carried the faint scent of the city below, mingling with the aroma of flowers arranged around the terrace. And in that blend of natural and curated beauty, Monica sensed the full arc of her transformation, the careful cultivation of presence and impact that had begun in uncertainty and hardship now culminating in a moment of poised recognition and potential. She adjusted her posture, a subtle shift that conveyed both confidence and openness, and allowed herself a brief exhalation, the weight of past burdens lifting incrementally as the night held promise and opportunity in balance. The sound of distant traffic, laughter, and music intertwined with the soft rustle of her dress, creating a symphony that underscored her emergence, a reminder that she was no longer merely surviving, but actively shaping the trajectory of her life with intelligence, foresight, and grace. Each decision, each interaction, each glance purposeful and reflective of the woman she had become, prepared to claim the next chapter with unwavering dignity and quiet power. The morning air was crisp as Monica Carter stepped out of the cab and onto the steps of the corporate headquarters, the towering glass facade reflecting the rising sun in shards of gold and amber, each beam a reminder that the world was vast and brimming with possibility. Her red dress, freshly pressed and sharp against the contours of her frame, seemed to absorb the light, making her presence undeniable, and with each step up the marble stairs, she felt the pulse of determination steady within her chest. Inside the lobby, the hum of activity, footsteps, murmured conversations, the tapping of laptops, filled the space with a rhythm that matched her own heartbeat, and she moved through it with deliberate calm, exchanging polite nods and smiles with colleagues who recognized competence and poise rather than wealth or status. As she approached the elevator, she noticed the subtle dynamics of the office unfolding, the way influence moved through gestures, eye contact, and tone, and she felt a thrill of understanding, a sense that she could navigate these currents with strategy and grace. The doors opened to reveal a floor bathed in natural light, sleek desks, and organized spaces reflecting efficiency and attention to detail, and Monica found her own desk, placing her briefcase and notebook carefully, each movement deliberate, signaling readiness and focus. Meetings commenced, each one a test of her intellect, clarity, and ability to communicate under pressure, and she handled each inquiry with precision, demonstrating an expertise that drew acknowledgement without a trace of arrogance. And the subtle nods from her peers reinforced that she was no longer simply a participant, but a contributor whose insights carried weight. During a brief pause, she looked out over the city streets, observing the ebb and flow of life below, and felt a quiet satisfaction in the contrast between the bustling world. outside, and the control she exercised within her own sphere. Each email sent, each conversation held, each decision made was a step toward the larger vision she had set for herself, a vision that had grown clearer and more attainable with every challenge overcome. And as the afternoon light softened through the tall windows, she felt a sense of rhythm in her accomplishments, a cadence that spoke of mastery, resilience, and focus. The office began to empty as evening approached, but Monica remained, reviewing notes and planning strategies, allowing herself the quiet satisfaction of tangible progress and the recognition that her efforts were both deliberate and effective. The sun dipped lower, casting a warm, golden glow through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and Monica paused to take in the view. The city sprawling endlessly below, alive with opportunity and energy, and she felt a profound connection to the rhythm of ambition, the movement of influence, and the possibilities that lay ahead. She allowed herself a moment to breathe, to center her thoughts, and in that stillness, she acknowledged the journey she had undertaken, the loss, the struggle, the small victories that accumulated into strength, and recognized that each choice she had made was a statement of purpose, a declaration that she would no longer be defined by the past, but by the deliberate creation of her own future. As the city lights flickered on, mirroring the stars beginning to emerge in the sky above, Monica Carter felt the quiet satisfaction of agency, the sense that she was stepping fully into her own power, prepared for every interaction, every opportunity, and every challenge, her mind clear, her purpose resolute, and her presence a testament to the resilience, strategy, and grace she had cultivated. Knowing that this chapter was only the beginning of the remarkable trajectory she had set into motion, Monica Carter left the office that evening with a sense of quiet accomplishment. The sky above Manhattan painted in deep shades of indigo and gold as the city lights began to twinkle like scattered stars, reflecting in the glass facades of the skyscrapers around her and lending a cinematic glow to the streets below. She walked with measured steps, her red dress flowing subtly with each movement, signaling a newfound confidence that drew the occasional glance without effort or self-consciousness. The rhythm of the city seemed to echo her own heartbeat, a pulse of possibility, an energy that filled her with anticipation for the evening ahead. The gala reception where she would encounter not only colleagues, but influential figures who could shape the trajectory of her growing career. As she approached the venue, the sleek architecture and the warm illumination from the interior welcomed her, and Monica paused for a moment at the entrance, taking a deep breath to center herself, feeling the weight of the journey that had brought her from the uncertainty and isolation of recent months to this poised moment of presence and opportunity. Inside, the room buzzed with conversation, laughter, and the clinking of glasses, a tapestry of professional ambition and social grace, and Monica navigated it with deliberate calm, offering polite nods, attentive smiles, and sharp, insightful commentary whenever appropriate, her intelligence and poise commanding respect in a way that was subtle yet unmistakable. She moved from table to table, engaging in discussions about projects, strategy, and collaboration, listening as much as she spoke, each interaction reinforcing her sense of agency and the value of her insights. The soft glow of the chandeliers reflected in her eyes as she noted the nuances of human interaction, the way authority and influence were projected through posture, tone, and subtle gestures, and she considered how each observation could be applied to her own growth and positioning within the professional sphere. Midway through the evening, Monica found a quiet moment on the terrace, the cool night air carrying the faint scent of blooming flowers and the distant sounds of the city, and she allowed herself to reflect on how far she had come, from the turmoil and instability of her divorce to the deliberate cultivation of competence, confidence, and resilience. She watched the skyline stretch endlessly before her, each building a monument to ambition and perseverance, and she felt a sense of alignment between her internal transformation and the external world that had once seemed indifferent to her presence. The approach of a familiar figure across the terrace caused a brief, controlled pause in her breath, a recognition of the history and complexity that existed beyond professional interaction, yet she remained composed, her gaze steady and her posture confident, conveying both awareness and authority. Every step she had taken, Every decision and effort over the past weeks had culminated in the mastery of her own presence, a silent declaration that she was no longer defined by the limitations or betrayals of the past, but by the strategic, purposeful choices she now made for herself. The city's hum, the soft murmur of conversations from inside the gala, and the gentle rustle of her dress as she adjusted her stance all coalesced into a rhythm that reflected the balance she had achieved between vulnerability and strength, ambition and grace. And in that moment, Monica Carter recognized the full scope of her emergence, the deliberate crafting of a life defined by intellect, poise, and the quiet, undeniable force of her own will, knowing that the chapters ahead would be written on her terms, each interaction, decision, and gesture a testament to the resilience, foresight, and dignity she had cultivated through every challenge she had faced. Monica Carter stepped into the grand ballroom, the soft hum of conversation and the glimmer of crystal chandeliers filling the space with a subtle vibrancy that mirrored the energy pulsing through her own veins, and she moved with a quiet confidence, every step deliberate, every gesture measured to convey assurance without arrogance. The evening air was alive with the rustle of silk gowns, polished shoes on marble floors, and the faint scent of floral arrangements that accented the sophisticated environment, and Monica felt the alignment of her presence with the elegance around her as an affirmation of the journey she had undertaken. She approached a cluster of influential guests, exchanging greetings with calm poise, her tone steady, her words precise, drawing interest and attention without effort, and she noted the unspoken respect in their reactions, the recognition of someone who had endured, adapted, and emerged with clarity and purpose. Each conversation she held was an exercise in awareness, observation, and strategic interaction, reinforcing the impression of a woman who not only belonged, but had mastered the subtle currents of social influence and professional authority. Monica allowed herself a brief glance at the panoramic view outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city spread below in a mosaic of light and movement, and she felt the resonance of possibility, the reflection of her own growth mirrored in the streets alive with ambition and determination. As she moved toward the center of the room to address a group of colleagues, her confidence grew with each measured step, the red dress catching and refracting light in a way that seemed almost symbolic of her internal transformation, a visual testament to strength, poise, and the deliberate crafting of presence. Conversations flowed, introductions were made, and Monica listened as much as she spoke, balancing attentiveness with articulate insight, each interaction a reinforcement of the competence and grace she had nurtured since leaving the shadows of her past life. The subtle click of her heels on polished marble punctuated her movements, the sound a quiet accompaniment to the rhythm of the evening, and she felt a sense of satisfaction in the recognition that her resilience and strategy had carved a space for her in this world. Near the terrace, she paused to take in the ambient lighting that highlighted architectural details, the interplay of shadows and reflections echoing the nuances of her own journey, and she allowed herself a private moment to acknowledge the transformation she had cultivated through careful decision-making, focus, and an unyielding commitment to reclaiming her own narrative. Her gaze met that of a familiar figure across the room, a measured acknowledgement of the past and the present, the briefest exchange of glances carrying the weight of history tempered by the composure and authority she now projected. Monica's thoughts traced the path from vulnerability to mastery, the sequence of choices, efforts, and insights that had culminated in this poised moment, and she recognized that every step, every decision, every display of quiet control was not only an assertion of self, but a demonstration of the power inherent in resilience and intelligence. The gentle murmur of voices, the soft clinking of glasses, and the low hum of music created a backdrop that amplified the sense of presence she carried, a harmony that reflected the alignment of her internal strength with the external environment. As the evening progressed, Monica engaged in discussions that furthered her influence, each carefully considered contribution enhancing both her visibility and credibility, and she felt a steady satisfaction in the subtle yet profound effect of her calculated interactions. The night deepened, and as she stepped onto the terrace for a brief reprieve, The cool air and distant sounds of the city below reminded her of the expanse of opportunity that lay ahead, the endless streets, the lights, and the people, all part of a canvas upon which she could continue to assert her vision, her competence, and the dignity she had reclaimed. In the stillness, with the city as witness and the soft glow of lamps illuminating her poised figure, Monica Carter felt the culmination of her efforts, the quiet confirmation that she had not only survived but had emerged with authority, clarity, and the steadfast assurance that the chapters to come would be written by her, guided by strategy, grace, and the unwavering power of a woman who had mastered both the art of presence and the resilience of spirit. Monica Carter stood at the edge of the terrace, the cool night breeze ruffling the folds of her red dress as she surveyed the sprawling city below, the lights of Manhattan twinkling like a constellation of ambition and possibility that stretched endlessly into the distance. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the journey she had undertaken over the past months, the quiet triumph of reclaiming her life after uncertainty and loss settling steadily in her chest, a rhythm that aligned with the hum of the city beneath her feet. The gala continued inside, voices mingling with the soft strains of live piano music, the clinking of glasses, and the gentle murmur of conversations that carried a cadence of sophistication. Yet Monica remained centered, her presence a calm anchor in the flow of social energy, her poise conveying both authority and grace. Each step she took across the terrace was deliberate, a reflection of the careful cultivation of her own presence, and as she adjusted the subtle drape of her dress, she felt the tangible power of agency, the awareness that she was no longer defined by the shadows of her past, but by the deliberate choices she had made to arrive at this moment. Inside, she noticed colleagues and acquaintances casting glances in her direction, a mixture of curiosity and respect, their recognition of her competence and composure reinforcing the quiet validation that she had longed for, the sense that her voice and insight carried weight and consequence in a room previously dominated by inherited influence and wealth. Monica moved with intent, joining a discussion among executives, her contributions measured, precise, and confident, each word demonstrating her grasp of strategy and analysis, her presence enhancing the conversation without the need for overt display or assertion. The glow of the chandeliers reflected off crystal glasses and polished surfaces, the refracted light highlighting the deliberate elegance of her stance, a visual echo of the transformation she had undergone, from uncertainty and displacement to deliberate control of her own narrative. At a quieter moment, she paused to look through the tall windows at the streets below, watching the pulse of the city, the interplay of movement and light, and felt a profound sense of alignment, as if the rhythm of the world had synchronized with the steady beat of her own purpose and determination. The air carried a mixture of scents, subtle floral arrangements mingling with the faint aroma of polished wood and ambient candles, creating a sensory backdrop that enhanced the calm, deliberate energy she projected, and Monica took a slow breath, absorbing the environment, noting the interactions, the subtle power shifts, and the spaces where influence and opportunity intersected, each observation sharpening her own strategic insight. Moments of reflection allowed her to center herself, acknowledging both the challenges she had faced and the mastery she had cultivated, the careful attention to detail, composure, and strategy that now defined her approach to every interaction, every choice, and every engagement. As the evening deepened, she engaged in one-on-one discussions with key figures, demonstrating not just competence but awareness, listening intently, responding thoughtfully, and subtly guiding conversations with the precision and clarity she had honed, her presence reinforcing a narrative of capability, intelligence, and resilience. The cityscape outside continued its luminous display, the glow of streetlights and building windows reflecting the endless possibilities that awaited, and Monica felt the quiet satisfaction of having navigated the delicate balance between visibility and discretion, authority and approachability, influence and humility. Each handshake, each smile, each intentional glance was a reinforcement of her transformation, a subtle assertion that she was now in command of her narrative, her presence a testament to the culmination of focus, determination, and strategic patience. And as she stepped back from the terrace railing to re-enter the room, Monica Carter carried with her the full awareness of power reclaimed, dignity preserved, and the knowledge that the next steps of her journey would be guided by clarity, strength, and the deliberate shaping of the remarkable life she had worked to build. Monica Carter moved through the final moments of the gala with a poised awareness, the warm glow of chandeliers reflecting off her red dress and catching the eyes of those around her as she engaged in one last series of conversations that balanced grace, intelligence, and quiet authority. The hum of the crowd, soft laughter, and gentle clinking of glasses created a symphony of sophistication that she navigated with the precision of someone fully attuned to both her surroundings and the subtle currents of influence within the room. She approached a group discussing an upcoming charity initiative, her contributions thoughtful, articulate, and measured, eliciting nods of respect and consideration from the executives and philanthropists present. Every gesture, from the tilt of her head to the placement of her hands on the railing as she leaned in to listen, conveyed confidence without arrogance, signaling a mastery of presence that spoke volumes about her journey from uncertainty to command. The city beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows stretched in a panorama of twinkling lights, traffic moving like arteries of opportunity, and Monica allowed herself a brief pause to absorb the view, drawing strength from the vast possibilities it represented, each flicker of light a reminder of the choices she had made and the path she had deliberately constructed. Her reflection in the glass mirrored not only her external composure, but the internal alignment she had cultivated, a sense of equilibrium born from resilience, strategy, and the careful reclaiming of her narrative. As the evening wound down, Monica excused herself to the terrace, stepping into the cool air where the distant sounds of the city blended with the softer hum of the event, and she felt the delicate balance of solitude and presence, the perfect intersection of reflection and anticipation for the chapters yet to come. The skyline shimmered against the twilight, a mosaic of ambition and potential, and she sensed the subtle shifts in her own influence. The recognition that the authority and clarity she carried now radiated naturally, commanding attention while remaining entirely her own. She allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction, acknowledging the arc of her transformation from vulnerability and displacement to deliberate mastery and poise, each interaction and decision reinforcing the power she had nurtured over weeks of focused effort and intentional choice. Monica's gaze swept across the horizon, noting the streets alive with movement and opportunity, and she contemplated the future with a calm certainty, aware that every step she had taken, every challenge she had navigated, and every insight she had gained had coalesced into the confident, capable presence she now embodied. The soft rustle of her dress, the gentle brush of wind across her skin, and the distant murmur of conversation inside. The ballroom created a symphony of environment that mirrored the rhythm she had cultivated within herself, a harmony of patience, strategy, and resilience. In that stillness, she recognized that her journey was not simply about reclaiming a position or status, but about asserting agency, embracing dignity, and projecting influence in a way that was measured, intentional, and authentic. Each heartbeat reminded her of the strength she had harnessed, the clarity she had achieved, and the deliberate steps she would continue to take as she navigated the opportunities and interactions ahead. As the night deepened, the city lights reflecting in her eyes, Monica Carter felt the full weight and promise of the life she had rebuilt, a life characterized by autonomy, precision, and quiet mastery, each movement, glance, and word a testament to the resilience, intelligence, and presence that now defined her, preparing her to step forward into the next chapter with confidence, purpose, and the unwavering certainty that the trajectory of her journey was fully, unmistakably, her own. Monica Carter stood quietly on the terrace as the final guests began to filter out of the gala, the city skyline behind her awash in the deep hues of twilight, the streets below glittering like scattered diamonds in a vast, endless sea of light. She allowed herself a slow, measured breath, feeling the steady rhythm of her heartbeat and the weight of accomplishment that had built over months of deliberate effort, resilience, and determination. Each step she had taken since leaving the shadows of her past had been calculated, thoughtful, and intentional, and now the culmination of those choices was evident in the way she held herself, composed and commanding, as her reflection shimmered in the glass panels around the terrace. The soft murmur of conversations from the remaining staff, the distant hum of traffic, and the occasional chime from the nearby streets blended seamlessly into a soundtrack that mirrored the internal harmony Monica had cultivated through her journey, a balance of strength, grace, and self-assuredness that radiated outward without force or pretense. She adjusted the fold of her red dress, the color vibrant against the soft glow of the terrace lights, and allowed her eyes to travel across the panorama of the city, absorbing the energy of countless lives intersecting and moving with purpose, each light and shadow a subtle reminder that the world held infinite possibilities for those who seized them with clarity and courage. The memory of her first steps into homelessness, the uncertainty, the nights filled with apprehension and longing, flickered briefly at the edges of her mind, but instead of bringing pain, it reinforced the magnitude of her transformation, the deliberate and painstaking crafting of competence, dignity, and influence that now defined her presence in both the professional and social spheres. As she observed the flow of the room, she noted the subtle acknowledgement of her peers, the recognition of intellect, poise, and strategic thinking that needed no embellishment, and she felt a quiet satisfaction in the fact that her authority was self-earned, derived from careful cultivation rather than inherited status or superficial displays. The terrace offered a brief reprieve from the intensity of the gala, and Monica allowed herself a moment to center her thoughts, considering the next steps, the opportunities that awaited, and the connections she could leverage with integrity and insight. Her gaze lingered on the horizon, where the last traces of sunset painted the sky in deep purples and soft golds, and she imagined the trajectory of the life she was intentionally shaping, each decision, conversation, and engagement a deliberate stroke on the canvas of her future. The gentle breeze stirred her hair and the folds of her dress, creating movement that felt both organic and symbolic, a reflection of the adaptability, resilience, and strategic grace that had brought her to this point. Monica's mind traced the arc from vulnerability and dislocation to mastery and poise, the series of choices, observations, and insights that had coalesced into a presence both calm and compelling, and she recognized that the authority she now projected was inseparable from the clarity and self-awareness she had worked tirelessly to develop. The city continued its quiet symphony, distant sirens, footsteps, and the occasional hum of engines blending into a backdrop that framed her own rhythm, and she felt a profound sense of alignment, the inner strength she carried harmonizing perfectly with the external environment. Every movement, glance, and gesture in that moment was deliberate, a testament to the journey from uncertainty to command, and Monica Carter allowed herself a subtle, private smile, acknowledging the depth of her growth, the reclaiming of agency, and the quiet assurance that her path forward was defined by her vision, her strategy, and the unwavering confidence of a woman who had transformed adversity into the precise, deliberate mastery of her own destiny. Monica Carter lingered on the terrace as the gala wound down, the soft glow of the city lights illuminating the contours of the skyline, each flicker and reflection mirroring the steady illumination of clarity and control she now carried within herself. The night air carried the faint scent of jasmine and polished wood from the interior, mingling with the cool breeze that brushed against her skin, and she inhaled deeply, feeling a sense of alignment between the world around her and the mastery she had cultivated in her own presence. As she observed the final guests departing, she noted the subtle acknowledgments, the polite nods, and quiet smiles that hinted at recognition of her intellect, poise, and command of space, and she allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction, the culmination of deliberate effort and strategic patience settling over her like a mantle. Monica's gaze drifted toward the horizon, the twinkling lights of the city below stretching endlessly, each intersection and avenue a reminder of the countless possibilities that lay ahead, the paths she could traverse with confidence, insight, and authority. She thought of the months that had brought her here, the uncertainty, the displacement, and the quiet, determined work of rebuilding her professional and personal life. And in that reflection, she felt a profound appreciation for the journey, the lessons, and the inner strength she had developed. Each decision she had made, every interaction carefully navigated, every opportunity seized or observed, had contributed to a framework of resilience and clarity that allowed her to step fully into her own power without hesitation or doubt. The city hummed beneath her, a symphony of movement, light, and energy, and Monica felt herself harmonizing with its rhythm, attuned to the subtle currents of influence, opportunity, and potential that flowed through every street and skyline above. As she turned back into the interior of the venue for a final glance at the event, she moved with deliberate steps, each one conveying authority and assurance, and she engaged briefly with colleagues and peers, offering words that were precise, thoughtful, and reflective of the strategic insight she had honed through the challenges she had faced. The chandeliers above cast warm light across the polished marble, highlighting her figure and the quiet elegance with which she carried herself, the red of her dress glowing against the subtle amber reflections, a visual metaphor for the internal transformation she had nurtured from uncertainty and adversity to clarity and deliberate mastery. Monica paused to observe the final moments of interaction, the gentle folding of conversations, the polite exchanges, and the acknowledgement of effort and presence that required no overt declarations. And she recognized that influence and authority could be asserted with subtlety, with control, and with an unwavering adherence to dignity and composure. The view from the terrace again called to her, and she stepped outside, allowing the cool night air to refresh her senses, the lights of the city stretching below like an endless constellation of opportunity and potential, each one reflecting the deliberate choices, insights, and mastery she had developed through her journey. She felt the steady hum of possibility, the assurance that every path she chose, every interaction she navigated, every decision she made, was an expression of deliberate strategy and inherent power, the culmination of months of careful observation, patience, and thoughtful action. In the stillness, with the city as both witness and collaborator in her emergence, Monica Carter allowed herself a slow, steady exhalation, the rhythm of her breath matching the pulse of accomplishment, mastery, and quiet triumph she carried within, and she acknowledged that the chapters to come would be defined by her clarity, insight, and the unwavering confidence of a woman who had reclaimed her narrative, her agency, and the enduring, deliberate authority of her own presence. Monica Carter stood on the rooftop terrace, the first hints of dawn painting the city's skyline in shades of soft pink and gold, the lights of the skyscrapers gradually dimming as the city awoke to a new day, and she breathed in deeply, feeling the crisp air fill her lungs and the steady beat of her heart align with the rhythm of possibility that stretched endlessly before her. Every step she had taken from the uncertainty of the streets to this vantage point had been deliberate, each decision, each choice, each calculated effort a testament to the resilience and clarity she had cultivated over months of focused intention. Her red dress, now a symbol of transformation rather than mere appearance, flowed gently in the morning breeze, reflecting the subtle glow of the rising sun, and she felt the tangible presence of her own power, quiet yet undeniable, emanating from the way she carried herself and engaged with the world. Around her, she turned to glance at the streets below, the early morning traffic moving steadily along avenues and side streets, people commuting with purpose, and Monica recognized in their movement the same principles she had applied to her own life: strategy, persistence, and careful attention to the currents that shaped opportunity. The memory of the nights spent uncertain, the moments of doubt and solitude, flickered briefly, not as pain, but as a reminder of the strength she had forged, the lessons learned, and the deliberate cultivation of agency and clarity that now defined her every action. As she surveyed the city, she envisioned the path ahead, the relationships she could nurture, the professional endeavors she could influence, and the personal growth she would continue to pursue with intention and care, each step forward a reflection of mastery over her own narrative. Monica allowed herself a brief smile, the subtle curve of her lips an acknowledgement of the journey from vulnerability to authority, from displacement to deliberate presence, and she felt a profound sense of alignment between her inner clarity and the external world she now navigated with ease. The soft rustle of her dress, the gentle caress of the morning breeze, and the quiet hum of the awakening city created a harmony that mirrored the rhythm she had cultivated internally, a balance of poise, strength, and thoughtful awareness that ensured every movement, glance, and interaction was intentional and impactful. She reflected on the conversations, insights, and connections she had made, recognizing how each engagement had reinforced her position, her credibility, and her capacity to navigate complex social and professional landscapes with grace and intelligence. The warmth of the sun gradually intensified, casting a golden glow over the rooftops and streets, and Monica felt the surge of possibility, the sense that her journey had prepared her to embrace opportunity with confidence and clarity, her presence commanding respect without effort, her decisions deliberate, her trajectory fully within her control. As she stepped back from the edge to descend toward the streets, each movement measured and poised, she carried with her the quiet assurance that the life she had built was the product of intention, resilience, and mastery, and that every chapter ahead would be written with clarity, purpose, and unwavering strength. The city below thrummed with potential, each flickering light and passing car a reminder of the vast possibilities that awaited. And Monica Carter walked forward with certainty, fully aligned with the deliberate, empowered, and extraordinary life she had reclaimed, ready to embrace every challenge, opportunity, and encounter with the confidence, insight, and grace that now defined her entirely.